We are live. We are here with my pal Chris Meager, and folks are just filtering in. For those of you who read what was in the invite, it is a Pentagon insider here to talk about Venezuela. I mean, we are going to talk about that, but Chris is a really chill guy. This isn't going to be like a crazy thing. We met when I was doing that JCOC thing that folks followed me through, where I went to all the different military bases and learned all about what the military does back when the Pentagon was still had a full newsroom, still had a full press corps. How are you feeling now? Like, it's got to be kind of weird to see the place that you used to work be so incredibly different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of an understatement, you know? I
Yeah.
think everything from reporters being in the building to just the way the experience and or lack thereof of the Secretary of Defense and the implications of that to kind
Yeah.
of just the chaos and dysfunction of literally the department tasked with protecting uh, Americans around the globe, you know,
Yeah.
and keeping us safe. It has $1 trillion budget. It's the biggest government agency, one of the biggest employers in the world, you know, and so
Mhm.
it's just a real shame, honestly, is the easiest way to say it. I mean, what he's done to politicize the military, what
Mm.
he's done to fire a lot of these men and women who have put in decades of service to their country,
Mm.
literal American heroes,
Mm.
who Pete Hegseth has just kicked to the curb because he doesn't think that they're sufficiently loyal
Mm.
to President Trump, which is not the point.
Right.
They are loyal to the Constitution and to the flag. And these men and women have put themselves in harm's danger over and over and over again. They were leaders that the troops looked up to, and so I mean, just kind of across the board, what they've done inside the Pentagon, it's been a real bummer every day since walking out the door 10 months ago.
It's gotta be. I talked to folks who used to work at the White House, and they're like, it's really weird to see just the lack of security and protocol, and even just like, they used to like basically take my shoes from me before I went in the West Wing. They took everything, your watches, your rings, anything that could possibly go off or buzz, your phone. And they're like, and now, they have these right-wing provocateurs in the Oval Office with whatever gadgetry they want. Like, just even the general bare minimum traditions and safety is just not there. And at some point, like, that feels scary to me. That feels like, even for their sake, why wouldn't you want to have the security?
Yeah, I mean, I think these things have real implications.
Yeah.
I know that the traditional news media isn't necessarily held in high regard by the American public writ large. Polling shows,
It's not
um,
great.
they're down there with members of Congress in terms of institutions that the American people dislike the most, but they still play a critical role in our democracy, and as somebody who dealt with the press both at the White House and then at the Pentagon, I can tell you these guys are a big pain in the butt. They come with questions that are annoying to answer. They have
Mhm.
information that you don't know how they got it. Reporters can be a pain, but that's because they're holding power to account.
Yeah.
They're holding the people in charge of our government accountable for the taxpayers
Mm.
who give their money to the government, and it's part of a healthy democracy to have that tension and that push pull, and having experienced people both inside the White House and the Pentagon to have those conversations. And
Mm.
now what you're seeing, to your point, at the White House, now what you're seeing at the Pentagon for sure are these news organizations, if you could even call them news organizations, who
The My Pillow guys news org. Yeah.
yeah, like I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure the My Pillow Guys television station is not going to be holding the power to account from their Pentagon reporter.
No, certainly not. The thing I remember about when you were there is how many times we were reminded that we have a civilian-led military, that civilian oversight of the military and inclusion and decision-making is so important. It's why the Secretary of Defense technically becomes a civilian to lead, right? Like, we had General Austin, and then he became a civilian to lead in this position. Um, it feels like the Pentagon doesn't even understand or know that. Like, no one told them that as they're deploying National Guard on cities and trying to militarize one state against another. And I think even to people who aren't super in on like what the military does, it stands out as like the weirdest, not right thing. Do you think that there are people within the system still that are holding back the floodgates of all hell right now? Like, is there anything you could give us that makes us feel a little less like it's not just total crazy town, or is it just crazy town now?
No, I mean, it's definitely crazy town, and, what gives me hope, in this time, especially when I think of our national security, are the men and women in uniform who are serving, and,
Yeah,
civilians and people, not every political appointee in the Trump administration is necessarily a bad person, but they all report up the chain to the top
yeah,
guy.
right.
I think he's shown himself to be, do whatever Trump wants, and also unfit for office and unqualified for office. But the men and women who I got to work with every single day, not just in the press shop, but throughout the Pentagon, the most junior to the most senior, they woke up every single day with a mission to accomplish, and they did whatever it took to accomplish that mission.
Mm,
Now, you know, I think they have to balance now, whether they speak up, when they're given an order or something that they might be uncomfortable with,
mhm,
or sort of grin and bear it, and get through it, and try to make change as much as possible from the inside, or try to continue the norms and traditions of the military,
mm,
that have served us well over the decades.
mm.
Um, but there's a cost to speaking out,
Yeah.
and I
They'll
think
replace you with a loyalist. So it's like, do you speak out in this particular moment, you get replaced with a loyalist right away, or are you sort of, like you said, trying to like hold it together in some sort of fashion?
And even with the lawyers that they've put in place,
Oh,
those military department lawyers are there so service members can go and determine whether an order they've been given is lawful, right?
right.
But now even these lawyers are political hacks,
Mhm,
and so the troops are missing that sort of
absolutely.
unbiased guidance on what is an awful order or not. So it's just becoming so much more messy, so much more political than it needs to be, and so much more tainted. But I truly do believe that the men and women who serve are, and you've seen them, you've talked to
Yeah.
them.
I know
They're
I'm worried
they're
about my little honor guard babies.
yeah,
I know they're
they're
full-grown men, but to me, they were like my little babies. I loved them. They
but
were
they're the
such
best.
sweet kids, yeah,
They're
who
there for
really
the
knew
right reason.
everything about the Pentagon, were so excited to share it with the public, like
Yeah. Yeah, their job, for those 2 or 3 years was, to give Pentagon tours, and
yeah,
they took it just as seriously as if they
very.
were hopping on a ship and being shipped overseas for, a potentially more dangerous mission, and that's what I love about these guys, right? Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter if you're pushing paper or you're firing a gun or you're on a ship or you're in an office, like, they all take their job so seriously, and again, I don't wanna sound starry-eyed or like my head is in the clouds about the reality of what we're seeing from Hegseth and President Trump, but I do know, the character and the integrity of the men and women in uniform, and I'm really hopeful that, um, they're going to far outlast this administration, and they're doing things, for the right reasons for the best they can, but
yeah,
part of this is just trying to survive this administration.
dude, for real. What do you think about, Admiral, head of US Southcom, saying he's gonna retire at the end of this year? This is where a lot of those strikes on Venezuela orders are coming out of, like, that freak you out a little, or
Well, I mean, it definitely, reports seem to indicate that he was pushed out by
yeah.
Hex for
For
disagreement.
being black, is it this time? I mean, it could be if he's not a woman, so I was like, "Well, what is he gonna use now?
It certainly didn't
Not
help,
loyal
right?
enough?"
It certainly didn't help. But it sounds like he and others in Southcom had issues with the directions that they
Out
were
of
being
order.
given in attacking some of these ships in the ocean. Normally, and I had the opportunity to meet and work with Admiral Halsey. We actually flew down for his ceremony where he became commander of Southcom, and the secretary gave remarks. So I got to meet Admiral Halsey a few times, and he was very kind, gentle but firm, man. And
Yeah.
I think people were genuinely excited about his leadership. Again, going back to what I said earlier, like he's now part of a long list and growing list of very, very senior leaders in the United States military who have been fired because they don't toe the line of this administration, or to your point, because they happen to be female or they happen to be a person of color.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's maybe a combination of one or two of those things to get a person fired. But we're talking about decades and decades and decades of institutional knowledge and experience that we're now missing, and it's going to make it harder to convince people to stick around. It's going to make it harder to retain good talent because it's like maybe I'll get promoted, but I'm just going to get fired. If I don't throw on a "Make America Great Again" hat and toe the line. So,
Yeah, my
it,
friends got out because they don't want to be charged with war crimes. I've got two buddies who were going to renew, and they were like, "Close enough. I'm not doing it. This is crazy." One, it's not like you make a ton of money in the military, and the amount of school that these guys have, they could go into the civilian world and have a fine career and be great. Like there are opportunities for them outside, and
100%.
you stay in for the honor of it, for the camaraderie of it, for the fact that you really believe in this, like you said, mission. And in these cases, they're like, look, man, I'm not trying to end up on some tribunal in 3, 4 years when this shakes out. Like, I can't put me or my family through that. That's not what I signed up to do. So, like you said,
Yeah,
you're going to lose good people.
yeah, yeah. You're gonna lose good people, and you know that's just the reality of it. They like to tout their recruitment numbers, but just as
Those are
important
Biden's numbers.
as well.
First of all, those are Biden's numbers. Let's be
I
real.
agree with that.
I'll give him
We
everything
we
he's got in the last 4 or 5 months, but up to then, it was Biden's numbers, and it was Austin's plan, which was
Yeah,
like starting to provide childcare, improving the food on bases, finally getting rid of some of the mold, maybe do something about the asbestos and the Coast Guard. Spending some of the money towards some of the things that have been priorities for a long time, not blowing $300 million on a fucking ballroom or doing this little like a tour that Pete Hegseth is on. Oh, I'm going to go on a fighter plane. Oh, I'm going to go on a ship. Oh, I'm going to go work out with the SEALs. Like I know how much planning goes into that stuff. That's got to be maddening to the planning team too. That they're like, this is my day.
not to mention in the midst of a government shutdown
Shut
where
down.
we're worried about whether troops are getting paid or not. We should also be worried about what we're asking troops to do, and and planning a glam squad fighter flight for the secretary should not be on the list of essential services that our military needs to be providing at the moment. But I mean, back to to the earlier point about recruitment. My first meeting with Secretary Austin, once I joined the Pentagon, he brought up recruitment as a top priority of
Yeah.
his, and we put a lot of time and energy and work into doing what we could to improve those numbers. To your point, and they were headed in the right direction
Mhm.
as we passed off this administration, in large part because of the emphasis he made on taking care of our troops, and making those improvements to housing and to pay and
Mhm.
to benefits and all of that sort of stuff. So this doesn't just happen with the flip of a switch. It takes a lot of time and energy and work.
Yeah.
To your
In particular with Austin, even just the week I was there, 5 different bases and a couple times with Austin, a couple times with you, so many times the word strategic deterrence. We are not war machines. We're not trying to train people for combat. We're trying to train people for life skills. We have like all the cool stuff happening with Space Force, which is really technologically advanced. We have the benefit of like the Army Corps of Engineers doing maybe really great infrastructure projects or learning more. We're looking at nuclear energy, not just nuclear bombs, like all of the cool stuff that was happening happening to train people within the military structure, but to perform like really crucial and honestly very cool tasks, like a lot cooler than being in the desert somewhere with the gun, like way cooler stuff. And
Yeah.
when then Hegseth comes in and he's like, "No, we're the Department of War." Austin must be losing his goddamn mind because every day that was like what he was trying to break that stereotype of the military is a place you go when you have no something for you. This is just a place to go and kill people. No, no, no. That's not actually what we want to do. War isn't about that hand-to-hand combat casualty thing. It's about outsmarting them. It's about having better technology, better people, better teamwork. And I mean, I can't imagine what that man's day is like. He deserves rest, but he's got to be pissed as hell every day to just see like the absolute about face and bastardization of like everything that was working, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pissed off, and I didn't put
Yeah.
in, a tenth of the work that Secretary Austin did. I
Yeah.
I would say one thing in particular that he really emphasized, the man's a pretty private guy. I wouldn't say he's like an extrovert. He
No.
doesn't necessarily enjoy media or glad handing or dinners or
Yeah.
socials. But one thing that he emphasized was the importance of our relationship with our allies and partners,
Yeah.
and how that broadens our network, our strength around the globe, what we're able to do, the force that we're able to show, the deterrence, to your point,
Mhm.
the deterrent effect that we're able to have. And we spent a lot of time investing in those relationships. We were in Europe, we were in Asia. I mean,
Philippines. He
I was
really
there.
dodged a bullet in Philippines with the work he did over there. Like,
Yeah, right. I was with him 2 years. I didn't even go on every trip, and I visited 40 countries, you know?
yeah,
And that doesn't even count all the people that came to the United States
right.
for him to have a discussion with, but he understood that our ability to deter China, our ability to deter our adversaries was not just about the United States, but it was about the multiplier effect that our relationships with our allies and partners around the globe could have. And
Mm,
we invested in those relationships. And this administration has turned that on its head and closed the United States off to the rest of the world, made fun of our allies and partners, insulted our allies and partners. Uh, haven't invested in things like NATO. And that has an impact. That has an impact on the way that China views us, that Russia views the situation with
yeah.
Ukraine. It has a global impact in terms of our standing with the world. And in addition to just pissing off people that we should be considering our friends.
Speaking of friends, a lot of folks were freaked about the Qataris coming to Idaho to train on the F-15s situation. I did an explainer talking about we've trained with Qataris since 1991. We've got a base over there that's like the center for Middle East theater and whatnot. Can you talk a little bit about the Qatar situation and like why that is good, what might be bad about it? Folks are they're very, I think a lot of people maybe heard it for the first time when they heard the way that Hegseth said, they're getting a base here, which they're not. But can you just explain a little bit about the Qatar relationship?
Yeah, I mean, the Hegseth thing, for one, is a good example of why words matter
Yeah.
and why our senior leaders need to be thoughtful and careful about what comes out of their mouths,
Hmm.
because it has the opportunity for misinformation or disinformation to spread,
Hmm.
and for confusion to sow. Um, so I'm glad that they quickly clarified that, but I thought that was a good example of somebody who maybe doesn't know what he's talking about something.
Yeah.
So that's point number one. Point number two, I could understand with sort of the headlines over the past few months why people would think that maybe there was something shady here.
Hmm.
Obviously the deal with the
The
Air Force One
plane.
that
Yeah.
Trump bought, and all of that nonsense that just sort of leads people to wonder, like, is this corruption? Is this
Mhm.
quid pro quo? Is there some sort of deal
Yeah.
here happening that we should be aware of
Yeah.
or be threatened by or scared of? But to your point, the relationship with the Qataris goes a long way back. And we have similar relationships with other allies and partners where, the United States is the greatest fighting force in the world. We have all of the capabilities, the finest capabilities, cutting edge technology,
Mhm.
and the people who know how to deploy these capabilities. And that's what you need when you're talking about some of these capabilities, like an F-16 or something. You gotta have the capability itself, which is a very complicated airplane, and it's complicated to learn how to fly. You need a ton of, time and energy spent into just getting trained up. You need people who are able to train. There are often language barriers, to that. You also need the infrastructure to be able to repair them, so we can't just
Mhm.
give another country a bunch of, our capabilities and say, "Good luck." What
Yeah,
if it breaks down? Um, you
right.
know, so there's a lot of different elements at play
What
here.
if it breaks down such an interesting part of this? My dad was a helicopter engineer for Sikorsky, and he worked on like special projects, right? So, like some military cool stuff. And his thing was like, people don't understand. It's not like a mechanic to a car where you could bring any car to a mechanic and they can kind of figure it out. In military airframes and helicopters and whatnot, maybe one guy knows how to fix the nose, right? And a different guy does the blades, and a different guy does the screws. And that's all to make sure that like somebody couldn't steal the plans and just make their
Yeah,
own of this. They're like,
yeah,
but he's like, it's hundreds of people go into like that particular type of training because folks are like, well, why don't we just train them in Qatar to do this? And I'm like, okay, because you would have to bring hundreds of mechanics plus the trainers plus like Americans don't want to go live in Qatar and do that. They'd be doing that full time. That would be a deployment and that would suck for
yeah,
them and their families. That's why we
yeah.
don't do it there.
Yeah, and it's why, a year or 2 ago, you saw reports of us before we gave Ukraine, some fighter jets, we
Yeah, they
flew
came here. Yeah,
Ukrainians over to Arizona to train them up on the system because
right,
it does Ukraine no good to give them these fighter jets if they have no idea how to fly them or
right.
utilize them. And even if they do know how to fly them, they might not be able to utilize them. So it's all very complicated, and like I said, like you said, we had a relationship with Qatar. We have a similar relationship with other countries, where we do similar things. And so this particular instance didn't really spook me as much as it has some, though I completely understand in the context of some of the bigger, uh, news headlines around, the gift of the Air Force One and all of that sort of stuff,
Mhm.
why that might be confusing to people.
Yeah, for sure. They're like, "We're training these guys out of nowhere." I was like, "Well, no, but also this." So one of the things I've been talking a lot on TikTok is like identifying different creators who specifically talk about military news, military foreign policy, different things like that, because it is such a focus now for the American public that it really wasn't before. You kind of saw the civilian world is totally separate from the military world, and you kind of just accepted they probably know what they're doing over there. And now that we don't have that level of trust and that sort of like tradition and chain of command, man, does the public want to know what's going on over there? And they're really surprised by a lot of it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I think, is we're living in the midst of one of the most complicated, security environments that we ever have. There's a
yeah,
couple of wars raging, or there's one in Russia, Ukraine. The Middle East is on edge and
right.
has been at war for the last couple of years. You have China, picking up steam. You have Donald Trump, who promised to put an end to endless wars, now
Well, he's
doing what?
ended eight now. I don't know which
Yeah.
one. I don't know which eight, but
I mean, he's
eight,
expanding our
six,
military
seven of them, six, seven
entanglement.
of them.
Yeah, exactly. So the world is a very complicated place, and I think that gives rise to concern, amongst a lot of people. On top of that, when you can't trust the information that you're getting from your leadership about what's coming out of that building, and then on top of that, you make news by kicking out reporters who are there to hold you accountable.
I know.
I could understand why people are freaked out and wondering, asking questions, and it does add up to a loss of transparency, a loss of trust and confidence in the United States military, which, to be very clear, doesn't have a perfect track record, and
Yeah.
needs that accountability and transparency.
I wish
I'm
headsets and them would realize that, like, yeah, okay, the news is there to hold you accountable, and they do, but they also tell your story better
Yeah,
than what you're going to have. Like, I'd much rather have Jennifer Griffin write about me than I would the guy from My Pillow TV. Like, she at least has the context. She's been to the spaces that are being talked about. Like, they had reporters over there that were real experts on military reporting in particular, and now you just have people who are going to make those same mistakes. They say crazy stuff that doesn't make sense, spread conspiracy theories, like put out propaganda. Like, you're not even getting people who tell the story well.
Reporters aren't there to be scribes
Mm.
for public officials. They're not there to spit out talking points. You know,
Mhm.
they're there to ask questions and to hold the power to account. Um, you know, I didn't always like it, but and we didn't always get it right for sure. But were very intentional and we tried very hard when I was in office to make sure that reporters had access to information, that we're telling them about the actions that we were taking around the globe. Sometimes things caught us off guard. Sometimes things happen quickly. There's a lot. There's a
Yeah,
lot
there's a
of
lot to it.
yeah, there's a lot to it. And like I said, we didn't always get it right, right? But I can tell you that our going in position was to be open and transparent about something, no matter how tough it was to actually talk about. We would hold, just for example, we would hold one off camera and two on camera press briefings every week. So a total of
That's what I
3.
thought. They don't do that anymore, though, huh?
They've
You
had
used to have the general come out with the nice uniform and everything.
with a spokesperson, they've had I can count on my one hand how many
Mhm.
press briefings they've had. They've had a couple more with Secretary Hegseth himself, but
Yeah.
after the big strike in Iran, but that's it, and so the press aren't even getting this opportunity to ask questions, and when they do, you know, their questions are often going unanswered, and now they can't even get in the building. So,
Or they're
uh,
getting a text when they ask a question saying, "Your mom said." This is the new
yeah,
thing. Have you seen that? "Who
yeah,
authorized
real
this? Your mom
professional.
did." This is how they're responding to them. Like,
Yeah, I there's just no need or room for that. Again, we're in a government shutdown right now. The only people that are supposed to be working are essential employees. Everybody else should be furloughed, right? So these essential employees, that's the type of behavior that we're seeing out of them. These your mom jokes or
yeah.
rash comments that don't that are being that are given in response to very simple basic questions, So
What do you think Biden thinks about it? You knew the man well, you were with him for a little while afterwards and transitioned out. What do you think Biden, like the last president, thinks about what's going on now? Has he said
yeah,
anything?
you know, he hasn't said a whole lot, but when he has spoken up, I think he's expressed a lot of concern about the
Yeah.
abuse of power and just the behavior of the administration writ large. But
Mm.
um, there's something to be said about just not waking up and thinking about what your president is doing or not doing every single day, and just being able to go about your day without worrying about what's going on at the Department of Defense,
Better
and how
days.
how the secretary has messed things up, or what it
Or
might
called
be.
all the generals fat or told people that they like.
Right.
What do you
Yeah.
think of that generals meeting? Can you imagine having to have put that together? Because it would have been like partly your job previously to help make that thing happen. Like, that
I
was
honestly can't.
crazy.
I honestly can't. I mean, the cost to taxpayer alone was
What do you think it
probably
cost?
millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Millions.
I mean, we're talking about the 300 most senior military officials in the country,
Right.
or in the military, but located around the globe, right? They
Yeah.
don't all work at the Pentagon. Some of them are in Florida. Some of them are in California. Many of them are in Europe. Some of
Right.
them are in the Indo-Pacific, in Hawaii and South Korea and elsewhere. You
Yeah.
know, uh, and many of them have to travel. Many, if not all, have to travel with communications devices so they can communicate with the secretary if something were to pop up.
Yeah.
If China all of a sudden decided to take advantage of all of them, uh,
You know. Mhm.
uh, they have to be ready and able to pick up the phone and call the Secretary of Defense and get the president on the line and that sort of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys fly using military aircraft in the first
Hmm.
place. So that's the cost on top of just whatever hotel rooms and
Right. They couldn't just throw
uh,
them on a JetBlue flight. They got to be on like a secure,
yeah,
semi-secure, yeah, space.
I'll tell you, when I was there, the Secretary of Defense held a twice a year what he called a senior leadership conference. And it was some of the most senior political leaders, so undersecretaries who had been Senate confirmed, people at my level, so assistant secretaries of defense, but not even all assistant secretaries of defense. And then uniforms, it was the service chiefs.
Mm.
So the chief of staff of the army, the head of the Air Force uniforms, and then the 11 combatant commanders. So the people who are responsible for the different regions around the world. That's it. So you're talking 15, 20, maybe 25 uniform folks, but
Hmm.
very senior leadership. Even that was a lot to get that group there to bring in every person with a star on their shoulder, just to come and then to hear and then to see what actually took place and the
They had
aftermath.
nothing to say. There
Nothing to
wasn't
say.
even anything to say.
Yeah, it was a campaign stump speech.
I couldn't believe they live streamed it. Also, like if you really had that crowd in front of you, you must have something really secret to say. And you live stream it. The best part of it was when they would walk out and nobody would clap because obviously they don't, but because they're at attention, but I still loved it. I was like, that's good.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it was very intentional that they televised it, right? Because they wanted the audience was um, a political one,
yeah.
not the military men and women sitting in front of them.
I can't imagine like finding the balls to say I'm gonna do something like that and then give a speech about like shaving your face and doing PT. I was like, this is like something like a major would handle like after a lineup. This isn't like you're telling these guys who have been to like war colleges, like incredibly educated, frontline experience about shaving. Like, what are
Yeah,
you even doing?
yeah, these are some of the biggest, baddest, like,
Yeah.
men and women who have ever served in any military at any point in history, you know? Like,
Yeah.
they don't need a talking to about
Where do you get the balls to do that though? Like I can't imagine. I was thinking of like even the people that I met through my time with you guys there. I was like, I would never, ever, it would never occur to me to think that you would bother that person with something
Yeah,
as fucking dumb as this was.
I'm right there with you.
Oh, oh man. I would love to know what they think. Maybe someday in retirement we'll get that. How do you think
Yeah,
things are working? I know also your department worked a lot with like John Kirby, of course, and like national security and whatnot. Have you seen like how that functions now, or is it just sort of like
I
siloed
don't think
weirdo stuff?
yeah, I don't think it does. I mean, there are plenty of examples of, Secretary Hegseth and some of his minions not really communicating what they're doing to the White House, and that's gotten
Yeah.
them in trouble. Them talking about like scaling back the capabilities we're providing to Ukraine, and then the White House had to go and reverse those comments because that actually wasn't the case. I think that's
Hmm.
actually happened twice. But I mean, you have Marco Rubio, who is serving not only as Secretary of State, but also National Security Advisor. And I could tell you that even one of those jobs is too big for one person
Massive.
to handle, let
Hmm.
alone two jobs for one person. So I don't know how he thinks he's able to handle both. On
Meanwhile,
the
he's
sort of,
sneaking out on everybody. He's like giving up the informants so that he can get the deal for the for to be able to send sometimes American citizens to prison in El Salvador. Like Marco Rubio, I think I'm the most disappointed in him because I'm
yeah,
like, you were kind of normal, man. Like like what happened here?
yeah. I mean, people will do a lot of things in Washington D.C. for power.
I guess so. I guess so. Now they're saying maybe JD Vance and Rubio will be the next ticket, and I'm like, all right. Like, what are they going to call it? Like the no Riz party? Like the. Oh my god. Part of me can't wait for this to be over, and the other part of me is like, "Man, we got a ways to go." Do you have any
We
good
do.
news? Any, like, hopeful stuff? Are you working on anything cool right now?
You know, I mean, I have my hands in a lot of things at the moment. not really in the foreign policy space, but,
Yeah.
I think there is, a reason for some hope. I think people on my side of the aisle, on the Democratic Party side of the aisle, are having, serious conversations about the way ahead and what that looks
Mm,
like and what that means. We have a couple of big, kind of test cases here in a couple weeks in Virginia and New
mm,
Jersey in terms of
mhm,
gubernatorial campaigns, and those are always like a signal to the rest of the country about where we're headed for the midterms, which are
mm,
historically good for the party, not in the presidency. And so, but I think we're reckoning with what happened in 2024, and some of that reckoning is going better than other parts of it. But I
yeah,
think people get it, and how to answer those questions is complicated. But I think people get that there need to be changes, and we
mm,
need to focus more on kitchen table issues. And I think we have a strong bench of potential leaders who will hopefully kind of lead us out of this wilderness. So it does feel like we're a long way off from that, only 10 months in, but there will be a day where we wake up and Donald Trump is no longer president.
God, I hope so. Someday it's gotta happen sometime, right?
Yeah.
If you were let's say you were able to get back into your old job, right, what would be the first thing that you did? So
My
you're
old job.
back if this is
Yeah.
over, there's a new president, and they're like, "Chris, we need you back, homie." First day back in as Assistant Secretary of Defense, like, what would you do?
Or I'd encourage the Secretary of Defense even to hold a press briefing and uh, make sure that makes he or she makes clear that they understand the gravity of the moment that we're in, the gravity of the job that they are in,
Yeah.
the importance of a free press,
Mhm.
and more or less open the doors up of the Pentagon back for business for the American people. I'm not saying open the doors up and let anybody in,
But
but
I think it's cute, Chris, that for all the difficult conversations you had with the press, one of the first things would be to bring the press back in. I think that's a good thought.
I know. Well, people in my position are supposed to have complicated relationships with the press, and like I said, for as much as they gave me a hard time, and probably vice versa, I think there's a mutual understanding um, that the press is there for a reason, and it's an important part of our democracy, and it strengthens our democracy, and it makes our public officials better and more accountable. So that's what I would do from my position, but. You know, I think the issues inside that building go far beyond just our press posture at the moment.
Yeah, I know. I've said it'll take the rest of my life to recover from what's going on right now, and some of us will never see the recovery from the Trump administration. I mean, not just the fact that he completely destroyed the entire East Wing, which was the public and visitor
Yeah,
center wing. That's like
yeah,
unheard of and crazy. I feel like we're all kind of underreacting to that because it's like so unbelievable that you can't like internalize and process that.
yeah.
Um, and it's just like, okay, well, what are we going to do when this is over, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it definitely is. The East Wing is a symbol of kind of the fact that this is the people's house. When you're visiting the White House, you go in through the East Wing, and
And
there's a lot of
celebrate all
history.
the first ladies. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of history there, and I think the symbolism of that being torn down is pretty immense and tragic.
Wait, last question, because you know so much about defense and security. Folks are also concerned about the presidential bunker being under the East Wing. Do you know anything about that? Is that a conspiracy theory? Like, is he building the Hitler style bunker with the ballroom on top? Like, what's going
I
on?
s- I saw that, and to be candid, I didn't even know there was a bunker down there, which
I
means
don't
that
know that
probably
there is.
it, it, if there was, it means I wasn't important enough to know about it or probably get a spot in it if something
Yeah.
happened. So
I was like, I don't know that there is. I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
All right, cool. Well, good. Good chatting with you, Chris. Come back and chat with us again. Keep us updated on what you've got going on. And Can we count on you to be one of our phone a friends in 2026 when we have a question about the fuckery at the Pentagon?
That sounds good. Anytime.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Chris. Bye,
All right. See
guys.
ya.